Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to have your time today. Maybe for people who aren't familiar with this really eye-opening, incredible documentary, Dog War, what can they expect?
They can expect to see something they haven't seen before and that they probably wouldn't have expected is out there, which is the systemization of the dog meat trade in South Korea, which means millions of dogs are being raised to be slaughtered as livestock without any kind of hygienic guidelines, without any kind of real rules. They're not considered livestock, but they're also not just considered pets. So they kind of like exist in a strange gray area. And really, Korea is just sort of like a microcosm for the issue worldwide. It exists in other Asian countries, in China, Vietnam, Indonesia, some other countries as well. But so it opens your eyes to that issue in general, something that we wouldn't expect because we think of dogs as our best friend. But it also opens your eyes to some, I guess we'd want to say, heroic actions or questionable actions of some American veterans who are trying to stop the trade and doing whatever they can to do it, including covert operations. So it's action-packed, harrowing. It's difficult to watch, but never too difficult to watch. That I hope that turns the viewer away. And I think just something that opens their eyes and also offers some hope at the same time.
And maybe you can talk us through a bit about the genesis of the project. I mean, so you've worked on documentaries before, but it's quite, each very different subject areas. This on trial and under our skin. So how did you first, I guess, discover, this issue or felt like it was a really pertinent one? And then I guess beyond that, also following, as you said, these two veterans and kind of what they're trying to achieve and kind of seeing it through their lens, let's say.
I don't take on a film like as an issue. I don't think of like an issue and then I want to make that film about that issue. It's something about, although it is issue oriented, there's something about it that interests me, and it's usually some kind of like a clash of ideas or assumptions or realities that creates something more than just the issue itself. And in this, it was the idea of these war-hardened veterans, American veterans, who've experienced war, who are not very emotional necessarily, who have like a heart of gold for dogs and want to do whatever they can to save them. So to me, that was interesting, and it was also interesting. So it's this clash of ideas, the clash of expectations about what a man is, what a soldier is. But also the idea of it coming from the outside. Like, these are Americans, they're not Koreans. What does that mean? Brings up issues of cultural imperialism or cultural change or cultural difference at the very least. To me, that was interesting. What happens when you put these things together into the mix? I like that. I like it. I like challenging assumptions. I like for the audience to be provoked and to answer those questions, to look at them and answer themselves. So I think someone might look at this and say, well, it's not their business. This is cultural imperialism. It's the West coming to influence the East. It's the white men coming to a brown country telling them what to do. And that might be your opinion, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't ask the questions. And certainly people in the film as well ask some of those questions. And another question is, well, in your society, you eat pigs and chicken, and they do too, but you have no right to come here and tell us what to do. And maybe that's true as well. But I want to ask the question. And it also is important to say that those questions are being asked within the culture itself. So the dog wars are not just a war from the outside, from the West to the East. It's also a war within the country itself. That these questions this issue is imminent, as you know, by seeing the film. So we're highlighting all of those things. I'm not sure what the question was, but it was like, well, how did I get involved? So that's how I got involved. I found those issues really fascinating for myself. I used to be a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian on and off my whole life. So I've cared about these issues. I've cared about the treatment of all animals. So this was one more layer of that. I can say that the first time I went to Korea to work on this film, I started being a vegetarian again, because although I do see it different, I do see the dog meat industry is different from other livestock. Um, it was just one more like level, like why do we need to eat cows? They're still living sentient beings. I'm just going to take myself out. It didn't last too long because I felt like I needed protein and other things for health reasons, but it made me think. It made me think again. And I think that ultimately getting to that issue, because people always ask what I think, although it's not necessarily pertinent what I think. I do think that it's different when you're there and you're walking around the cages that these dogs live in their whole lives, never touching ground for the most part, unless they were stolen dogs. They still want to play with you, or they're so traumatized, just traumatized by what they've been through. But they still are wagging their tails, want to play. You can see they've been bred and domesticated by us, by human beings, to be our best friends, not to be livestock, not to be eaten.
And I mean, I guess one of the things, watching it, I mean, there were just so many harrowing moments when you were kind of putting it together, seeing all this footage, being there. Was there a particular moment that was the most challenging? But I guess you can always sort of maybe get yourself through those situations by bearing witness to that, by capturing those images, that you could be making a difference. So is that kind of the way you sort of get yourself through those really, really, really challenging moments?
I mean, that's a good question. I've never been asked that question before. I don't think there's anything like guiding, like in the back, even though I'm in a sort of sketchy situation that says you have to do this so the world can know. Like, it's probably in there somewhere, because that's why I'm making the film in the first place. I sort of like when I've once filmed brain surgery, and I'm really squeamish. Like, even when I give blood, like sometimes I faint. And so I was filming brain surgery, and I was just thinking, oh, not even thinking. It was just like looking through the camera lens. It was like, wow, look at all those colors and textures. So like I kind of lost through the lens of the camera. And I'd say that is operative also here, that there's something that when you have the mediating aspect of the camera, you're in it in a different way. It's sort of like you're much more focused, much more concentrated, and it's sort of like what's the action at play, in the moment. So it's just a little more, I guess, in intensive and focused, which takes me out of some of the questions about like, yikes, or this is so awful, or this is so scary.
Or even particularly maybe if you watch it back now, I mean, is there one moment that really still gets to you? I mean, I was thinking of it where what did they call it? The flame moment, or the bit where they're in that restaurant. I don't know, like, are there bits that really still hit in a different way, out of all of them?
Well, those two scenes that you just mentioned, I did not film, but the break-ins I filmed when we went out to on the night I was doing that. I think that was because they were preparing for something possible to happen. Like, they were bringing all sorts of equipment just in case. There was also sort of the legal aspects. This isn't legal what they're doing, and I'm sort of an accomplice. So it was all of that. It was like, yeah, fear for my own safety, and it was also legally, what kind of implications did I have myself? So all of that was operative during the shoots. And so a specific moment, I would say, I think really the way the film opens with that scene, that was kind of where we started in a way. And so it was like, it was kind of like thrown in there to something that I wasn't expecting. And when you're breaking into someone else's property and they catch you, anything can happen. It was pretty freaky.
Well, kind of as you were mentioning at the beginning, you do watch some documentaries, and different documentaries are aiming to achieve different things, and they are more sort of presenting one argument and providing evidence or support for that argument. Whereas maybe it is more brave and it is more bold to show the whole spectrum of opinions and show every dimension of this, and let it all just kind of sit together. So it's not necessarily putting forward, okay, this is my opinion, or I think this is wrong. But did that ever also present challenges in a way, because it is such a complex issue and you can see it from so many different perspectives? And when you're talking about people's livelihoods, for example, thinking about this older generation who didn't have enough to eat when they were younger, and where understanding, I guess, where that comes from. And it does put you in a place of empathy rather than necessarily just being black and white about this and villainizing a certain type of person. So is that, something amazing to achieve, but also quite difficult?
Yes, I think, I think you really hit it on the head. Most documentary films now are to the extreme, are advocacy films. While that might be important, it's also, I think, really problematic. And this film, Dog War, can be seen as an advocacy film. I mean, certainly it gets the issue out there. Certainly you can say that we have a point of view, that the filmmakers have a point of view, but we're not hammering it over the head of our audience. We're not villainizing the other side or the other sides. We are giving them a voice as well. We are showing that it's not a black and white issue. So I think that's really, really important. And I think it's really important right now. For example, the film has, I think, struggled in at least the United States in the festival circuit. And I don't think it's just because it's dogs being hurt and everybody loves dogs, but I think it's also because the gatekeepers right now, the cultural gatekeepers, want to sort of express a very particular narrative. And this is outside of the narrative, outside of the advocacy narrative. And I think they're, in many cases, looking at it as a film about white cis men going to a brown country, mansplaining, or like West-splaining. That's a new term I just made up. And I think that they have a problem with that. And so don't want to give it voice, and don't want to give the opportunity for us to ask and answer some of those questions, to look at it. So I find that highly problematic right now, at least in the United States. I think that that's what we're up against, is sort of like not just advocacy filmmaking as being sort of exalted, but a certain flavor or ideology of what that advocacy needs to be.
And what I do find fascinating as well is, ostensibly it is particularly about eating dog meat and, the treatment of those animals. But as you said again at the beginning, so many other issues come out of it, whether you're talking about, these two veterans and, really opening up and saying, look, you're not allowed to show emotion, you're not allowed to cry, but when it comes to talking about a dog, then you can. So, what does that say about kind of masculinity in our society? And then also the idea, when we feel so strongly about people eating dog meat, even me, I was questioning, but maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite, because is it that different from eating other kinds of meat? So sort of by focusing on this issue, you're opening up lots of others, and also lots of things around intergenerational cultural issues. So whether that's, between older and younger, whether it is between East and West. So you can kind of use it as a springboard to think about lots of other things too.
You said it yourself. I mean, you said it perfectly, actually. Yes, totally. And all those issues come out of the film. To me, it is really interesting and also kind of sad that men and sort of like the warrior man does have problems like expressing emotions. Especially from a sort of like, I'll call it a war society, which veterans have been part of. And so, that's, I think, really fascinating to see, like it's still to this day, I'm like, when I first was out with these guys, I thought they were assholes. Like, I thought that they were macho assholes. And they know that. Like, I've said it before. And then I'm like, but you love these animals so much. You'll do anything for them. You'll die for them. Like, literally, they would die for them and get teary-eyed. And like, I didn't get it. Like, I don't get it. And you probably won't get it unless you really go and explore that. But this is, like you said, a springboard to look at that as well. And yes, Korea is a fascinating culture that's changed so quickly in the past 20 to 30 years that it's like they've outgrown a lot of their traditions. And so the younger generation does have a very different perspective. And so I found that fascinating, just like Korean culture, like the contrast between the city and the country, or between the old and the new, really just fascinating and ripe for this kind of examination.
And in terms of what would be the impact you were hoping for from the film, and what has been the reaction so far? And I guess, has it been very different, in the US versus, has there been any backlash coming out of South Korea? What's happened so far?
Well, this is our world premiere.
Oh,
so we don't know. We'll see. I mean, we've screened the film very few places privately. So I can't say what the reaction has been. I think I think one thing that I've found is some people love the protagonists and some people hate the protagonists. And I've asked, and usually the people who hate the protagonists still say they love the film, which is good. And that gets back to our sort of advocacy issue, a question of, so I'm hoping, of course, that people find, beyond whether you love or hate the protagonists. Interestingly, Pulp Fiction had its premiere at Raindance Film Festival, and that's a film where, you can hate the protagonist. So we certainly have certainly has a history of the sort of love-hate relationship with the protagonist. I don't have a problem with that. What I want is, yes, I want more awareness about this issue. And I think ultimately I want people to ask the questions of themselves, just like you did. They said, well, maybe I'm a hypocrite. I want people to do that. Maybe we are hypocrites, but you can make up your own mind. I don't need to be telling you what to think. I'm just giving you some information. I'm entering into this world through a film that I think is entertaining as well as informative.
I mean, how does it feel to be having the world premiere at Raindance? And everything I hear about Raindance is there for the opening gala, like kind of like words like bit of a maverick festival, bit of the rock and roll, in this sort of festival circuit. So does it feel like the right place for your film?
I wouldn't have like imagined it, like said we need to premiere at Raindance, but I think it's perfect. The film is also up for the Spirit of Raindance Award. So that is very gratifying, showing that it does embody the principles of what real independent film is, and part of it is what we talked about earlier, sort of like the independent perspective. a film that challenges, that takes on different, both in content and theme, has sort of different approaches. So I'm really happy that it's premiering here. I think it's a perfect place to premiere the film.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. Absolutely fascinating documentary. So congrats on that. And really enjoy presenting it at Rain Dance. I think the premiere's on Sunday, isn't it? So
Great. Thank you so much.
so nice to chat to you. Thank you.
You as well. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.